And you're live.
Okay, everybody, welcome to House Education on Friday, March 14th. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. We are taking some testimony this morning as we look to vote out our miscellaneous education bill. This morning, we are dealing with what is currently on page 11 of the draft bill, the retirement allowance for interim educators. Little history here. It was a while back that we had a program that was meant to be temporary to allow educators who were fully retired to be able to return to the classroom or the principalship or the superintendency and work full-time and not have it affect their pensions. Right now, there's a rule, I think, that once you hit 60% of your earnings, that it starts affecting what you can receive via pension. So there was a proposal in government operations to change that. It's a government operations bill in some ways, it's an education bill in other ways. It's popped back and forth over the years because it affects pensions. So we took some of that language, put it in our miscellaneous education bill, and essentially extends the sunset on the program. In the case of what we have in front of us, 2 years. So we are going to hear from the Treasurer's Office to talk a little bit about this, and as well as from the Vermont Principals Association, which has been, I think, over the years, most familiar with this program and how it is interactive. So do we have Tim here? Yes, welcome. If you have a seat up front, that would be great. So the proposal before us is to just extend the program that was going to sunset in 2025 through 2027. We'll learn a little bit more about uptake, what it's been like, and there's just really some areas of the state where it has been used, but most areas where it really hasn't seen much uptake. Anyway, go ahead and introduce yourself and welcome to the House Education Committee.
Thank you very much. This is my first time here. My name is Tim Duggan. I'm the director of the Vermont Retirement Systems in the State Treasurer's Office. I've been in the role for 3 years. Prior to that, serving as General Counsel in the Treasurer's Office for a number of years. I'm here to talk about the extension of what we refer to as the Act 173 program. That was the initial government that created this program during COVID emergency times. If I may, first, I just wanted to give you a couple brief notes about the retirement system, the VISTR system. We serve about 10,000 active and 10,000 retiree folks in the state. Our average monthly benefit is around $2,000. Our funding, which I'm sure everyone is very keenly aware of, has been improving substantially over the past few years since all the work you did in Act 114 in 2022. In 2020, our funding level is about 50%. We're up to 61% as of the close of fiscal 24. We're on track to close our unfunded liability by 2038. So we're very excited, grateful for the support, and we think that it's a really important a path that the legislature set us on that we are committed to remaining on. We also have an OPEB system. OPEB is retiree health benefits. And that is less funded because we just started pre-funding that, but we went from being in a deficit position to over 11% funded as of the recent year, on track to close that by 2048. Just wanted to give you a couple of those high-level bullet points and say that, you know, workforce decisions that are made in this committee and elsewhere do have an impact on the pension. So we often think about it as a balloon where if you squeeze something at one end, it can impact the other. And so we're always mindful of that interplay between the active workforce and what happens in the pension system. And I always just like to take a plug to remind folks of that here. Act 173, as I mentioned, was passed in 2022. As presented, it was a response to the COVID times that there were real struggles in school districts. And actually, before if I can just also make one disclosure, I also am a school board member in my own local community. I'm not testifying in that capacity here. So sorry, I should mention that. Sorry, and I'm a parent to kids. But so this was passed to help get through COVID. And it was not particularly well supported by the Vista's board or the treasurer's office at the time. But it ended up going into effect at that point, and we have been administering it for the past 3 years. In the first year, there were 7 educators that took advantage of the program. In the second year, fiscal 24, there were 5, and in the current year, there were 3. So this has, I think, shown that there's not, from our perspective, not a particular need for this program. And it does create some challenges in the retirement system. One of the reasons why we asked for it to be a temporary program is because we would get pretty concerned about behavior changes. That is to say, if folks started understanding that there's this option to receive both a full pension and a full salary, effectively 1.5x what a normal salary for a position would be, then that's the kind of thing that can change retirement behavior. Things like retirement behavior are very important inputs to our unfunded liability, because those assumptions are what tell us, what we should expect to be paying in aggregate over the long term. So one of the reasons why it was created as a 1-year program with 2 possible years extensions was so that it wasn't something to be counted on that could drive behavior. There were other important safeguards built into the program, such as you cannot continue on the retiree healthcare. You have to switch back to the active school healthcare. And there were some fees that are paid to the retirement system, though not equal to the benefit that is paid. So we learned that this was potentially moving in the miscellaneous education bill yesterday. The version I have extends the program through 2031, but it sounds like that's changed since that time. The board did take this up because we happened to have a Vista's board meeting yesterday, and they voted unanimously to not support the extension. Concerns of the cost of the program, the cost shift, moving part of a salary into the retirement system. It is a very manual intervention type of administration. Our system is not designed to have someone be both an active member and a retiree at the same time, kind of trip one or the other. And as I mentioned before, concerns over behavior change. Once a program that was temporary starts getting extended, I think we feel the writing is probably on the wall to a permanent program, and that's where behavior may change. I touched base with our actuaries just to make sure I could understand and represent reasonable costs. At this point, in the scope of our, we're in the billions of dollars of unfunded liability. So this is not moving the needle at the scale it is currently utilized at. But to the extent it is extended and maybe we start seeing numbers in the, in the 20s, then maybe we start talking about adding to our unfunded liabilities, which I'm sure is a concern for everybody. Those are our initial concerns, but as I said, it was fortuitous that we happened to have a board meeting yesterday, so I was able to bring it to the board, and the decision there was to not support it. Happy to answer questions.
Yeah, so that vote was based on an extension to 2031.
The vote
Do
was,
you think that vote would have changed any if we were just extending it a year or 2?
no, the language was to not support an extension of Act 173 in the future. So it was really any extension.
Other questions from folks? Would it be fair to say that this has not shown to, the uptake's very, very low. You said 3 this year.
Yes.
So that sort of concern about behavior has not really borne out with that level of uptake.
Yes. They're concerned about behavior. I think that's also because, again, some of the safeguards that it's not known if the program will be extended until the last minute. I think that was intentional.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can't sort of sit in a position year after year, that if you come into the program in position X, you can't remain in position X for any extension. The idea as presented was always that there's an emergency.
Right.
The school district is beating the bushes to try and find someone, can't do it. There's one person out there that can solve the problem. And to create that as a response to what we all saw during COVID. I think that was the purpose. And I think as COVID has gone away, we've seen that schools have been able to hire.
Yeah, I bet the field may disagree with that because we've lost people on emergency and other licenses. Okay, so I really see 2 points here. One is extending the sunset. But then there is removing language saying that you can only sit in one position for 1 year. Yes.
Would putting the verbiage back in that requires that you only sit in one position for a year and then would have to change position if you wanted to do it for another year, would that make it more, would it make the board be more in favor of it by putting that provision back into it for a short extension?
Based on our conversation yesterday, doubtful. Always careful to speak for a body.
Right.
But the general consensus was that this was, I think, and going back through history, this is reemployment, shifting costs of active teachers into the pension system is something that we do try to avoid. So I think the board has historically looked with disfavor on this type of enterprise, and so kind of little changes, I think, would probably not have moved the needle in our discussion yesterday.
Well, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Tim.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
My pleasure.
Okay, Jay, you are up on this matter. Welcome.
Thank you. Can you folks see me okay?
Yes.
Full
Perfect.
disclosure, I can't see myself on the screen, so it's kind of weird. So I'm not sure
You look great.
why. Well, I don't know about that. So for the record, Jay Nichols, Executive Director of the Vermont Principals Association. My testimony today concerns the concept, excuse me, of extending the provision authorizing a beneficiary of the Vermont State Teachers Retirement System to resume service as an interim educator and continue to receive a retirement allowance for that period. Full disclosure, especially for those who are new to the General Assembly and or the Committee on Education, I worked very hard to make the concept of educators being able to come out of retirement to assume important positions that could not be filled in our public education system for 1-year emergency situations without them having to lose retirement benefits a law. And I deeply appreciate the General Assembly and eventually the Treasurer's Office in supporting us in implementing this law. That was the purpose, for dedicated retired educators to help out in a pinch so that we could make sure students receive the quality instruction or leadership they needed. As you've heard, this applies to retired school principals and superintendents also. But the plan was always for a temporary fix. It wasn't designed to fix systemic problems or to allow an individual to continue in a position and still receive retirement benefits for more than one school year. We'd be fine with an extension of the law, but do not support the suggested language to be deleted that states a beneficiary may only resume service during each 1-year renewal period if service is performed in a different interim school educator position. In other words, we'd be fine with extending the language under the same conditions as are in current law. However, we do not support allowing the same person to continue in the same position in the same school in consecutive years. This was never designed for that purpose. It's to really help out a system that's in crisis and can't find anybody, and an educator is willing to say, hey, listen, I'll step in for a year, get you through, but it's not meant to be a post-retirement career path for anybody unless they're willing to travel around the state and fill in tough positions. And then if they're willing to do that and the need's there, that's fine. Again, it's only a handful of people. Less people have taken advantage of this than I thought would originally. But the fact that superintendents and school boards have this as an option in a really tough situation, I don't think it's a bad thing. But it should not be a pathway for someone to continue, working in their same role, to retire as a first grade teacher and then stay in that same system and do first grade year on, year out, and dip into the retirement system at the same time. Those are my prepared comments.
Thank you very much, Jay. Questions from the committee, Representative Taylor?
I'm just curious on if there could be language in there, maybe
Because so I can see where maybe 1 year in a position is not long enough to, help the need out or help the school out. Could we put in language that would maybe restrict it to 2 years in the same role?
I mean, ultimately, that's a policy decision. It's up to you. But again, when I envisioned this, and full disclosure, my second year at the VPA, and I've been here 8 or 9 years now, I pushed for this bill, and it took us several years to get it through. And it was largely in response to unfilled positions and seeing some places that were in real crisis where they couldn't get a first grade teacher. And they would ask their another elementary teacher in that district that retired, will you come in and do it? And they were like, then I retired. I want to be retired. I mean, I do it to help you out, but I'm actually going to get hurt out of it in my retirement. I don't want to do that. So it really was meant to be a 1 year thing. And I really hate to see us deviate from that. I actually agree with a lot of the positions that the Treasury Department's talking about here. I think as a 1 year emergency, I think it's fine. I don't think it rocks the system very much. But we've got our system headed in the right direction, and I don't think we should mess with that, personally.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, with the amount of provisional and emergency licenses out there, I would still say we're in a crisis. And I would.
I don't disagree in the crisis part. Totally agree, and that's why I think if you want to extend it the way that it is, Representative Taylor, I think that's fine.
Hartwell, then Dobrovich.
My question is related to Representative Taylor's, which is, I guess, sort of, is there a way that we can say that, I think it could go on for more than a year, that we don't find this position, that you no longer are guaranteed the job after a year and have to reapply, but like, if we still don't find someone, it's fine for you to reapply and we will hire you and have that consistency in the classroom, knowing that if someone shows up, that position could end. Is there a way to handle language like that?
That's
We
a
are
really good
definitely.
question. That's a good question for Beth St. James.
Beth isn't here.
It would, the way it's written right now, it would allow somebody, the way that the proposal is in front of us, it would allow somebody to remain in a position for more than 1 year.
Mhm.
For two, for the 2 years.
So.
Just worry about a system not working hard enough to bring new members in and really hitting the bushes to find people. In some ways, I'd almost have rather have somebody on provisional license if they're actually working towards permanent licensure, then they're going to be in our system for the next 30 years. They're going to pay into our retirement system. And, we need to be careful when we tinker with the retirement system. It makes me nervous.
Right. I mean, I don't want to de-incentivize administrators from working hard to find people. I feel like, that could definitely happen, that they stop really looking if they don't need to. At the same time, if we have 7 and then 5 and then 3 people that have taken advantage of this, I mean, are we sort of manufacturing a problem that doesn't really exist if it's going to be like 1 or 2 people that are double dipping in the entire state of Vermont?
That's the question before us. Josh.
So Director Duggan had mentioned the concern that once something is extended, does it continuously get extended until it becomes permanent?
Right.
So I'm gonna ask a question, being the naive newer legislator who doesn't know how some of this works. Is there a way to put a provision or something in there so it cannot be extended again?
Yeah. Future legislature. could do it.
Okay. I didn't think so based on previous conversations with council, but I figured that.
Yeah.
You can put in guidelines,
Right.
like the sunset, which
Right.
we have. Kate, go ahead.
It's not really a question, but I do want to just echo what I heard Jay say. We did a lot of work on the pension system. We have it moving in the right direction, so that it's there for teachers for decades to come. And I don't think we should do anything that's going to screw with it.
So I think one of the concerns is probably at the higher leadership level, that when you have an interim superintendent and you're in a superintendent search phase and you fail, that this is a way to be able to sort of continue on 1 more year with a retired person as your interim while you try to fill that position fully. It's a situation I've certainly been in as a school board member. So I think that's one of the areas of concern. Yes, let me give our witness a chance to respond if he would like.
Yeah, nothing that you've said changes my thoughts on this, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Emily, do you have a question?
Yeah, related to that, do we know whether it's teachers or administrators who are taking advantage of the 7, 5, and 3? Do we know?
I don't think we know fully.
I mean, that's news to me, I guess. I've actually been in that position as a school board member where we couldn't find and ended up having a retired person from out of state
Right.
come in. So
Or-
that's
or
a very
from
real,
State.
it's a very real issue.
Yeah.
I agree with that, but I mean, what we have been talking about and why we were talking about extending it is because of that crisis that we were talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm not opposed to considering extending it for the same reason, for one more year. But I guess I'm not comfortable with changing the language from the way it was prior to that.
Colin, did you want to say something?
If I may.
You may, yes, if you introduce yourself.
Sure, Colin Robinson, Vermont NEA. Just to and I defer to the retirement division, but just as a point of information, teachers who retire, whether they're an administrative position or a classroom position, can re-enter the classroom if they so choose to right now. They just can no longer receive their pension. So what we're talking about here is a very specific scenario where somebody's still receiving their pension and having this sort of temporary full employment. So I recognize sort of the point that you're raising, Chair Conlon, but I think in that type of scenario, if there was somebody who was willing to do that, they could actually step out of retirement for that year and serve in that capacity. The second point I just want to make is, the Visitors Board, they're the fiduciaries of the system. They work incredibly diligently. And I know there are some of you who were here for the pension conversation a couple years ago, and can appreciate that. I'm sure others watch it from afar. And anytime we do little things, we just have to be really, really careful. So just
Thank
wanted
you.
to
Thank you. I
share.
appreciate you pointing out the fact that one can be retired and come out of retirement and earn a full salary with full benefits.
So you just
basically
pause the,
Yeah, you pause your pension.
Thank you.
And they still.
So in the case of a superintendent, for example, they could give up their pension, work at whatever the salary is that's offered in that district for the superintendent and continue on and then resume their pension at retirement.
Would it change their retirement amount moving forward if they did that?
They'd be paying.
It's the average of your, sorry, go.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think we might have an answer on the wall here.
Go ahead, yes, Tim, or Chris, either one, yeah.
Yes, Tim Duggan. What would happen is the pension would pause.
Yeah.
The member would come back and earn a year or however many years they work of service credit, but it would be starting towards a new pension. Now, oftentimes they wouldn't make the 5 years that would vest in a new pension. So the result would be they would take their contributions back after they leave. And their initial pension would unfreeze and they would be back where they were to start with.
They would get a balloon payment of whatever they had paid in over the 2.5 years they were an interim or whatever.
It would be a return of their contributions, yes.
Got it.
So that's why
Got
we
it.
view this. If the compensation needed is pension plus salary, then really it's a comp issue. It's not a retirement issue. Thank you.
Okay,
you.
thanks. We're gonna close there because we need to get to the
Yeah,
floor at 9:30. Thank you all who came and
thank
testified.
you.